Hey y'all, it's Steve, Hobo with Wood. In this video, I'm going to be showing how I get my perfect kerf with my diode laser. This is going to be using the Roly, but it will work with any diode out there. And once you get your perfect kerf, you're going to be able to take and assemble your boxes with no glue whatsoever. So hang around. This is going to show you how to get the perfect kerf every time. Alright, so I'm in boxes.py. Now this is the home page, and you can go to menu and go to parts and samples, and you want to do burn test, the very top one right here. So menu, parts and samples, burn test. Now you shouldn't have to mess with the finger joints, but this is going to set up your overall size of these pieces. So depending on how well you can work with your hands, you may need them smaller or bigger, or you can do them smaller, but if you need bigger pieces to work with, you can do it. These are right now set up at 100 millimeters on the inner width. I'm actually going to cut it down and make it just 2 inches. I'm going to leave my step at a 0.01, and that's the amount of increase on the burn value between the sides, and you'll see what I'm talking about in a second. I'm going to do 2 pairs. My thickness of my material is 3 millimeters. I'm temporarily going to do an SVG. I don't want any tabs. I don't need any labels or any of this other stuff. I'm going to change my inner corners to corners instead of loops, and I'm going to do my burn correction at a 0.1, and I'm going to say generate, and it's going to generate an SVG and open up a new tab. And eventually we get this. Alright, so this is a pair, and this is a pair. And you can see here it starts at the 0.1. Then you got a 0.11, a 0.12, and a 0.13. These are the male, and this is the female of the same burn. Then that one ended at 1.3. This one picks up at 1.4, 1.5, 1.6, and 1.7. And these are a pair here. So that's what I'm looking for. Now what this is, each one of these sides is increasing by a step of a 0.01, and we're going to look for the one that gives us the best fit. So I wanted to make sure it's what I wanted, and it is. So I can close that. Now I can do a LightBurn file here and generate it. No, I didn't want to. I wanted to download it. There you go. Generate. It created a download anyway. So there it is. There's your download. So now I can go over to LightBurn, import from my downloads the burn test. This is what just downloaded today. Burn test. Open. And there's my burn test. Now, I don't need this, so I'm going to select it all and delete it. Now I use the red layer for my cut layer and my black layer for my engrave layer. So right now if I just hold shift and click on this black layer over here, my cuts and layers, that'll select all the black. I'll put it on red, hold shift and click on the green layer and put that on my black layer. Now that's the way I like it, and I'm going to set my power and level settings, speed settings. So let's see here. I don't want this, and I don't need a crosshatch, and that'll work for that. And actually, we can step that up to a 0.1. There we go. And the cut, that's good. All right. So one thing I want to caution you about on these files, these look like rectangles. They are not rectangles. If I select that, it's only going to get that one line. So it is possible that you can screw up these patterns because you can move individual pieces. So you want to be careful about how you move this around So what you could do is make sure you just select all of it and group it. Make sure you don't get the one beside of it. Now after grouping them, you can just grab, as usual, and move them around willy-nilly. Well, that didn't grab the black. Why didn't that grab the black? Because I'll bet you the black is all grouped. Yep. Alright, so let's undo that. There we go. I will select all the black and ungroup it. Now I will select it all again and group each individual one. Now why am I going to this trouble? Because if this is in fact the best test settings for my laser, I'm actually going to save this file, because your kerf will vary from material to material. So if you're really serious about knowing what your kerf is, you might run this test on multiple different material types and thicknesses, so you may want to save this so you can test it again later. So now we should be able to move these around individually. Yep. Alright, so now I've got a piece of scrap on my workbed. I'm going to move my camera, or the laser, out of the way. Update my workbed. And now I'm going to position, oh, I didn't mean to move my laser, but that's okay. I've already got my photograph. Now I'll move these where I want them to be to utilize as much of my scrap material as I can. Now it is important that you do not rotate these. You want to keep them oriented the same way, because here the 12's up here on the X and the 12's on the X, 13's on the Y, 13's on the Y. And the reason I say you don't want to rotate them is because the X and the Y on your diode laser is going to be different. That's the reason we're doing this test. So if you were to rotate this one 90 degrees and had the 13 cut out on the X and the 13 down here cut out on the Y, it would not be an accurate test. But this is going to work for me, and I'm going to select it all and send the job to the laser. So the first thing you may have noticed, while I was changing my cuts and layers, I did not change my cut priority, or the order of priority there, and it cut first instead of engraving first. But being what this is, it doesn't matter. I've moved it now, but I also want to identify these pieces, because I'm going to cut out the same piece with that is going to generate a different result. So I need to mark these, and I'm going to put these. I'm just going to put a 90 in here. The number 90, 90. Come on, 90. All right, and now I'm going to just engrave those 90s real fast to identify which ones are which. Alright, so I'm going to send that to job, and I'll be right back. Okay, I got that done. Now let's I'm going to grab all of these, move them off to the side for a second, update my camera. Now you can see those pieces are still there. They're cut out, they're engraved, they're marked with the 90. Now why did I mark them with 90? Well, I'm going to cut these out again from the exact same piece of material, but I'm going to take these. Actually, you know what? I'm going to get all my 90s and delete those. And now I'm going to do 45. And I'm going to put that in the center. Control D, duplicate it, put it in the center. Control D, duplicate it, put it in the center. Control D, duplicate it, and put it in the center. Now I'm going to take this and I'm going to come up here to my rotate tool and I'm going to rotate it 45 degrees. And I'm going to do each one of those 45 degrees. Now I'm going to position each individual one, I'm going to get the whole thing, on this same piece of material and cut these out again on a 45. Work. I've corrected my priorities. I'm going to select all of this, and actually, you know what? I'm going to group, well, yeah, I'm going to group all of that one, group all that. That and that. Now that I got them grouped, I'm going to go into my fill groups together, and I think that's what I want. Let's take a look at all of that in the preview. Yeah, that'll fill all that one, and jump over and get that, and then cut them out. That's what I want. And say okay. All right, now let's send this to the job. Okay, those are all cut out. Let's pick them up off the laser and see what we got. Okay, so we got 8 pieces here, 4 of them labeled 90 and 4 of them labeled 45s. So I'm going to start with the 90s first. And I've got 2 pairs of 90s. Got, see, 12 and 12. Yep, there we go. So this is our first pair. And I'm going to put the paired numbers together to look for the optimum, the best kerf using these settings. All right, so that there is, what is that, 12? Yep, that's 12. And that actually works pretty good. It went together without having to force it, and I can shake it apart. If we go back to the 11, is that 11? Yep, that's 11. 11 just falls apart. 11 won't work. So 12 worked pretty good. Now we'll go to 13. 13 is actually looser than 12. 13 is looser than 12. So go to, don't have a 14 on this one. Got over here on this one. So there's 90 and 14. Put 14 there, 14 here. And what do we get? That'll go, and that I got to put a little extra pressure on it, but that is a decent fit at 14. All right, come apart okay. Let's look at 15. 15 won't stay. If I even try to get it lined up, there we go, and then so it doesn't make sense unless you understand that your diode spot is not round, it is rectangular. Some of them are worse than others, and that is why some of you struggle so much when it comes to putting boxes together, and you're not happy with the particular spot size when the way it engraves certain things. Let's look at 16 and see what 16 will do. 16 would require the hammer. Well, no, don't. I can press that together. There's 16. That's a good fit. Didn't have to hammer it. It slid together and it come apart. 16, and we'll look at 17. 17. That's the difference in a rectangular spot size. Now, you've seen there, what was it? Was it all the even numbers that fit really good? Yeah, 14 works really well. 16 was right spot on. That one might be what I would choose there. But that's whenever 16 would have been cut on the X, because there's your 90 and 16 is real good tight fit. But 15, which is cut on the Y, is not, and 14, which was cut on the X, still is. So that's cut on a 90-degree angle. Now let's look at them cut on a 45-degree angle and see what kind of difference we get. Here, it was all of our evens that worked out pretty good, with 16 being really the best bet. If I was going to make boxes that I wanted to put together and not have to glue up, I'd go with the 0.16. All right, now we'll get our 45s and test those. We'll start with the 12. All right, let's see here. That'll be these two. So 0.12 and 0.12. It goes together, but it's floppy. 0.13. 13. It goes together. It's tighter. That's actually pretty good. That would work if I didn't want to have to be using my hammer. If I wanted to just put it together in a friction fit and still glue it up, 13 would be all right. But now let's look at 14, which is on the other one. 14 and 14. Again, 45s, 14, 45, 14. That's even better yet. Still wouldn't need the hammer. That might be pretty good. I'd actually go with that one over what I said a minute ago, because when you test fit it 2 or 3 times, now it's starting to get kind of loose. But that 14 is pretty good. Let's look at 15. So 15 and 15. Again, I was able to put that together. That's really good. Come apart pretty decent. 16. All right, now there's where I'm going to need my hammer. I'm going to tap that together with my little pecker. That's together. It's not flush and flat like I'd like it to be, but that's together. That's how, if I used my little hammer, it would put that together. But 16, that ain't coming apart. 17. 17. And that's as high as I went on those. So, 0.17 would even work. Now, if I was to be doing them on 90 degrees like this, like a box, I'm able to put 1.7 together without my hammer. But there you noticed you didn't, it was, each time it was getting consecutively tighter and tighter and tighter. There was no evens and odds. Here the odds did not work. The evens got better and better, but the odds did not work. And that's because of the variance in the X and the Y, the rectangular shaped diode laser. All right, so there is our test pattern we just cut out. I'm going to put those together and move it over here. Now, I'm going to jump over to, in this case, the Roly Automation website. And here they have the spec comparisons on the 10, 20, and 30 watt laser. Now, I'm working with the 30/10 watt module. And it shows here my spot size in the 30 watt, which is what I was just working in, is 0.35 by 0.22. Now, regardless which laser you're working with, your manufacturer should have what they say is the spot size for your laser. And it's actually irrelevant when you do this test, because with doing this test, you're going to get the perfect kerf for regardless what your spot size is. So let's jump back over to LightBurn. 0.35 and 0.22. 0.35 and 0.22. So I'm going to draw a rectangle. And now I'm going to, we'll go ahead and zoom in tight on it. And 0.35 by 0.22. 0.35, 0.22. Now we'll zoom in again. There is the shape and the size of the Lasermatic Roly Automation MK2 30 watt laser, according to their specs. You can see it's rectangular shaped. And when you're going to move this on the x-axis, it's going to cut at a 0.22. But then when it starts moving on the Y, you're cutting at a 0.35. And that's why you have that variation in the cut when I was in my 90 degree cut. All the odds were very loose and all the evens were very tight, because one number was cut on the X and one number was cut on the X and one was cut on the Y. But what I did was I rotated my figure. Now, I would love it if the manufacturer could actually rotate the way that the lasers are stacked in the actual module. Then you wouldn't have to do this. But whenever I rotated my piece, my actual graphic, to 45 degrees, now when the laser, it can still only move X and Y, but here, because I cannot rotate the actual laser beam, I've simulated rotating the artwork here. So now when it moves, if you notice here, the height and width, It's even. It's a 0.403 and a 0.403. Doesn't matter if it cuts X or Y, it's got the same beam width, 403 X and Y. It's still a rectangular beam, but because I've rotated it like that, it gives it a uniform cutting path. And that's how this trick works. When you're cutting out boxes, you want to cut them out so that the laser has to move at an angle when you're making those cuts. Now, what I do in order to maximize my wood and not have any waste, if this is my toolpath and I'm working with 300 by 300 material, and it's a toolpath, and I want to make sure that I'm getting all of my material out of here. So if I move this up here, there's going to be some waste. There's going to be some waste. Even if I, move those on up here, there's some waste. So what I do is I rotate my material 45 degrees. Now I can position my boxes in a way that I can utilize and get all of the goodie out of my material with practically no waste. Oh, didn't want to do that. Once I've got them arranged to where I want them to be, then I'm going to set my material on my work bed like that. And there, people say, well, it's hanging out. It's too big. Yeah, it does, but it actually sits right on top of the, if I do it in the center like that, it sits right on the honeycomb. And here I got a little bit of waste. I'll have to bring that down. I got it all grouped. Let's ungroup it. I'd have to bring that down to about there. But I'm not going to have nearly the amount of waste by not rotating that and letting it sit on top of the honeycomb. And then also what this does, with the corners of the material being right up on top of the honeycomb, it actually gives a little bit of space between the material and the honeycomb, and I get a cleaner cut. So that's how I get the perfect kerf with my diode, which happens to be the Roly MK2 with the 30 watt. But this technique will work with any laser. Didn't mean to go to that one. Let's go to this one. Here we go. So this technique will work with any laser. Your results are going to be different as far as which one fits which, because everybody's lasers are going to have different spot sizes. But this is extremely handy when working with boxes. Here it is. All right, so this is a cube that I made for my patrons for Valentine's Day. It was I call it an infinity heart cube. It's just a little tea light box. You can be scale it up, whatever. But I digress. Here is a cube, and this is a nice cube that I cut out with the Roly MK2. This is put together with all friction fits, no glue whatsoever. I can toss this around. I can even bounce it across there. It's not coming apart. This one I cut out with the same MK2, but I did not do any adjustments for the kerf. I just cut it out, and when I did, it goes together, but you're going to have to glue it together because ain't no friction there, baby. So guys, I hope you found this informative. I hope you've learned something, and you can appreciate how you can manipulate the laser and its actions to improve your kerf settings, especially when it comes to cutting out boxes. So I'm Steve, Hobo with Wood. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for hanging out, and I'll see you in the next video.